You've probably heard it a million times, right? Meat is bad, plants are good. It's this simple, clean narrative that we've all kind of come to accept as fact. But what if I told you that for an entire country, that story isn't just a little off? What if it's actually dangerously backward? Okay, let's just jump right in with this. Wow. That's a quote from Professor Jo Seon-tae at South Korea's Jungsang National University. That's not exactly a subtle hint, is it? It's a full-on challenge to what many people believe is the foundation of a healthy diet. So what in the world is he talking about? Well, here's Professor Ju's core argument. He says that the popular vegetable-heavy diet, the one that's held up as the gold standard of healthy eating in Korea, is actually built on a massive, dangerous myth. A misunderstanding that could be fueling some of the country's biggest health crises. I mean, take a look at this. On the left, you've got the classic healthy Korean meal, right? Rice, soup, a bunch of veggie side dishes. And on the right, you've got the supposed unhealthy option, loaded with meat. Professor Jo says this very image, this perception that we all share, is the absolute heart of the problem. And we're about to unpack why. So you have to ask, if this whole anti-meat idea doesn't actually line up with the reality in Korea, where did it even come from? Well, according to the professor's research, it wasn't a homegrown idea at all. It was imported. Let's trace the journey. It really kicks off back in 1977. The US government is facing a huge public health crisis, obesity, heart disease, and it recommends a low-meat diet. Then, fast forward to 1988, that exact message gets broadcast right into Korean living rooms. By the 2000s, popular American books become the go-to source for the anti-meat movement there, and even today, US studies about meat are often reported in Korea, just without any local context. And this, right here, is the crucial piece of the puzzle. The advice was being copied and pasted, but the situations in the two countries couldn't have been more different. They were quite literally worlds apart. And get a load of this. This is the disconnect in stark numbers. Back in 1988, when Koreans started hearing these warnings, the average American ate a staggering 120 kilograms of meat a year. And the average Korean? Just 18. It's like telling someone living through a drought to use less water because a city in a rainforest is flooding. The advice just made no sense for the situation on the ground. So if meat isn't the bad guy in the Korean health story, then what is? This is where things get really interesting, because Professor Ju points the finger at a completely different set of culprits. Let's just ask the question straight up. With serious conditions like diabetes and stroke on the rise in Korea, what is the real cause if it's not meat? Well, according to the professor, the answer is hiding in plain sight. It's in that so-called healthy meal. We're talking about a massive intake of carbohydrates from rice, bread, and noodles, which leads to constant blood sugar spikes. Over time, that can cause major insulin problems. And on top of that, all those vegetable dishes are often packed with sodium, which puts a ton of stress on your vascular system. And you can see this play out in the national health data. In the US, the #1 killer has long been heart disease, often linked to overconsumption of certain fats. But in South Korea, the biggest threats are cancer and stroke. These are conditions that are heavily influenced by blood sugar and blood pressure. We're talking about different diseases, which points to different causes. Now, to really drive this point home, Professor Zhao brings up this unbelievable case from a medical TV show. It's the story of a Buddhist monk who had been a strict vegetarian his entire life. So this monk, who had never touched a piece of meat, had a cholesterol level of 275. I mean, that is deep into the danger zone. He also had kidney damage and severely hardened arteries. You have to ask yourself, how is that even possible? The professor's explanation is pretty shocking. He says it's not in spite of being vegetarian that monks can have these issues, it's because of it. Their high-carb, meat-free diet is directly contributing to the exact health problems it's supposed to prevent. So all of this leads us to the professor's big conclusion, his solution, which basically flips the entire script. If a low-meat, high-carb diet is part of the problem, then maybe, just maybe, the answer is to bring back the meat. And look at this chart on fat intake. The World Health Organization recommends getting about 30% of your daily calories from fat. The average Korean is only getting 20%. But here's the real kicker. Elderly Koreans, the group most at risk for stroke, are getting less than 14%. Their bodies are essentially being starved of a nutrient that is absolutely vital for vascular health. So what happens when you add more meat into the diet? Well, Professor Joe says it's a triple threat. First, the natural savory flavor, the umami, means you need way less salt. Second, you get complete, high-quality protein, which is crucial for everything from muscle to your immune system. And third, the right fats in meat can actually help raise your HDL, that's the good cholesterol, which protects your blood vessels.
Okay, so what all of this is telling us is that we need a completely new food equation. We have to rethink what healthy actually means, especially when we're talking about a specific population with specific needs.
And this right here is the fundamental misunderstanding. A low-meat diet was what you'd call patient food. It was a targeted treatment for a specific group of people with a specific problem. It was never designed to be health food for everybody on the planet. And confusing those two things is how this whole myth got started. Which brings us to the professor's final prescription. It's pretty straightforward. He argues that to get better health outcomes, Koreans should seriously increase their meat and fat intake to get in line with global health recommendations, and at the same time, dial back the high-carb intake. Now let's be crystal clear here. This is not an argument to ditch vegetables. Not at all. The Korean diet is rich in amazing vegetables, and that's a good thing. The point here is about addition and balance. It's about adding sufficient meat back into the diet to make it more nutritionally complete for the Korean population. And you know, this whole thing leaves us with a really powerful question to ask ourselves. The way you think about healthy food, is it actually based on your own body, your lifestyle, and your needs? Or is it possible you're following a hand-me-down idea, one that was designed for someone else, maybe an entire ocean away?